10 years ago, three friends stood at nearly the same starting point. Same city, same age, same first real jobs, same basic hopes for the future. But what they did next was very different. And a decade later, their lives no longer looked the same. The first friend started investing early, not with a huge amount, but with consistency. Every month, a portion of income went into long-term assets. At the beginning, it looked almost too small to matter. But over time, patience and repetition turned that small habit into a visible advantage. The second friend was careful with money and saved regularly. But saving and investing are not the same thing. This person felt safe, and that safety had value. But over 10 years, the money stayed still, while the world around it kept moving. Inflation, opportunity cost, and missed growth began to tell their own story. The third friend stayed in debt. Not disaster-level debt at first, just recurring balances, fees, and the habit of postponing the hard decisions. But debt compounds too. Interest grows, stress grows, freedom shrinks. 10 years later, the cost was not just financial, it was emotional. In the first year, the differences were easy to ignore. In the second year, they still looked manageable. By year 3, the early investor had a slight edge. The saver felt fine. The person in debt still hoped things would improve later. That is how compounding works. It begins quietly. It does not announce itself. By year 5, the gap was real. The early investor had built habits, confidence, and options. The saver had a solid emergency cushion, but missed the upside of long-term growth. The person in debt was paying for decisions made years earlier, and the pressure was beginning to shape daily life. The divide was never created in one moment. It was built 1 month at a time. And then, 10 years later, the outcomes were impossible to ignore. The early investor had money working in the background. The saver had discipline, but less growth than expected. The person in debt had less freedom, more pressure, and a harder road to recovery. None of them were villains. None of them were perfect. But compounding had done what compounding always does. It magnified what was repeated. This is the lesson of long-term thinking. You do not become who you are in one dramatic decision. You become who you are through repeated choices. Investing early, saving steadily, or staying in debt are not just financial behaviors. They are trajectories. Across this week, we saw that compound interest can build wealth, daily habits can build character, small amounts can build momentum, and bad patterns can build problems. What looked ordinary in the beginning became extraordinary over time. That is the power and the danger of compounding. 10 years later is not a mystery. It is a mirror. It shows you what your repeated choices were doing all along. So before the next small decision, ask yourself, what future am I quietly creating? Because over time, the smallest choices become the biggest results.